I know that my form is good, but I do get a pump in my upper chest once I've done the exercise. And so once I've got a pump in that place, I know I'm doing it right.
You also get what I call, well, not what I call, what I've seen called ask holes, right? They will ask and they will ask and they will ask. They'll never action any of the advice. They just need to constantly ask. And at a much deeper level, when I unpack that now at this stage of my journey, I realize what we're actually dealing with is somebody who's feeling very anxious.
I've got more energy, I've got more strength, I've got more endurance, but my weight hasn't come down. Muz, what would you say to that person?
One of the biggest myths that has existed forever is that we are live. Welcome to Confessions of a Personal Trainer podcast. I'm Mus Ali. You are
Meite Niamba, thanks for having me.
Meite Niamba. Meite is our guest co-host today, and this episode or this series of episodes that we're going to do is probably going to be focused more on the personal training side of things, a bit more on the actual training, nutrition, fitness. Um, Obviously, the other episodes that I do with the in-person guests, they have a slightly different format, a little bit more in-depth chats for any topic out there, anything that I'm curious about. But I am aware that I'm a personal trainer. I am aware that the name of the podcast is Confessions of a Personal Trainer. So it's only fair that we also talk about training, nutrition, health, fitness, and all of that good stuff. For anybody that's looking for a little bit of help and guidance in that space. So, Meite, I'm sure anyone who's watched the channel before is somewhat familiar with you by now. And personally, most of the people who are even watching it kind of know us both personally anyway at this stage. But for anybody that doesn't, just give us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, in short, I've been a personal trainer for close to 10 years now, so we've known each other a little bit longer than that, I think.
It's crazy.
And I am now the head coach for Orange Theory Fitness, where I work currently here in Nottingham in the UK. I've also done quite a few bodybuilding competitions in men's physique. Did that for about maybe 7 years. I don't know, a long time. Won quite a few shows, won the British Championship twice, competed in Poland, competed in Spain, did lots of shows, won lots of trophies, and now I'm trying my best to help people get fit, man. That's pretty much it.
Okay. So quite a lot, but I didn't realize it had been 10 years. That's amazing. Wow.
I think it's yeah, it's been close to that, yeah.
To me, it feels like just yesterday that you had gotten your qualification and you were starting out as a personal trainer in Easy Gym in Oxford Street. And we were talking about how you were gonna like set up your sort of marketing in the gym, and it was like some sort of jar with stuff in it, and you were like gonna like guess how many things are in this jar, and then
Oh,
they'd
you
get
remember
feedback.
that? That's
I
crazy.
remember, yeah, I remember all of that because it was, for me, I've kind of been a part of your journey, walking alongside you the whole way, so it's quite easy for me to kind of like I've had a front row seat to the whole thing. Obviously, I've been part of the bodybuilding stuff as well. Working alongside you there, and I didn't work alongside you with like every single client that you dealt with and all the rest of it, but certainly, I definitely had a good view of your journey as a personal trainer as well. So, it's been fun to watch. All right, cool. So what I wanted to do is just take a look at some questions that we get working with people. Probably in the future, what I'll do is I'll kind of just like once people get familiar with this style of episode, is I'll post it on Instagram and I'll say, guys, do you have any questions for us? But otherwise, we will stick with questions that we kind of just get asked by clients. And the cool thing is I've got all sorts of different clients, right? So whilst I might be working with people like Meite, who are like highly experienced professionals, seasoned and accomplished bodybuilding competitors, and already have a vast degree of their own knowledge and experience, I also work with people who don't have any of that at all. So you get different questions from different people all the way along that sort of spectrum of like complete novice to massively advanced trainer. Um, and I've got one particular client who loves asking me every question under the sun. And I guess to some extent, this series of episodes is inspired by the countless individuals that I've come across like that. And I want to keep it very real and authentic. So whilst asking questions is great and it's a big part of the learning process, you also get what I call, well, not what I call, what I've seen called ask holes, right? They will ask and they will ask and they will ask. They'll never action any of the advice. They just need to constantly ask. And at a much deeper level, when I unpack that now at this stage of my journey, I realize what we're actually dealing with is somebody who's feeling very anxious. So the question asking is actually a response to some feelings that they're going through. Giving them the logical information isn't resolving it, which is why they keep asking the same questions. And actually, what they're looking for is some external reassurance that they're struggling to give themselves. And so that's my sort of like, I'm going to say subjective view of it. But they do help with content because then they ask questions that we can answer. Uh, so the first question I'm going to go with, and this is a fun one actually, and I think this is one that you're really going to enjoy as well because it's a question that it's been a big question with you even in our training. So the question is, what is the best exercise to build your upper chest? And so I've had this question over and over and over and over again. And admittedly, my answer has changed a little bit over time as I've learned a little bit more. But before I give my answer, I'm going to pass the baton over to you, Meite, and I'm going to let you go ahead and kick off the answer to that question. What is the best exercise to build your upper chest?
This is a tough one because I'm gonna go with originally when I first started learning about training, right? You go do a bit of Google search and it will tell you, okay, you got to do incline barbell press or incline dumbbell press. Essentially, any kind of incline variation is going to be your go-to because that's the way, the fibers on your chest, that's the way they align it. So when you drive your arm up towards your clavicle, that's what you're looking for essentially, right? So any kind of incline movement is is going to be working your upper chest. It still works like the whole chest, but more so the upper. That's my understanding. So I just went with that. And now I still think that incline exercises are going to be the go-to when it comes to upper chest. But if you don't actually feel the exercise in your upper chest when you're doing it, if you don't feel any kind of tension in your upper chest, then maybe that's not the exercise for you. So is there a best one? My cop out is always, it depends on the individual. Because for some, an incline barbell press might feel great. And for some, it's like, well, I feel it more in my shoulders than anything else. So maybe that's not the exercise for me. So I'm going to say, try it out. Try an incline dumbbell press, try an incline barbell press. But for the most part, it's going to be an incline exercise. My personal go-to right now is the incline dumbbell press. And funny enough, I don't feel it, like when I'm doing the movement, I don't feel it much in my upper chest. It's not that I don't feel it, but like because it's quite heavy, I'm just trying to get through the movement. I'm trying to get it done. I know that my form is good, but I do get a pump in my upper chest once I've done the exercise. And so once I've got a pump in that place, I know I'm doing it right. That's gonna be my short answer for you.
Okay, so weighted incline presses, whether it's barbell, whether it's dumbbell, whether it's machine, is you'll go to generally pushing the weight in the direction that that muscle is on your body. Um, and that's a fair answer. And I wouldn't disagree. What I would add is this, depending on the context of the individual, and every question is going to be like that, right? Everything is going to be like, this is generic advice, and it generic advice is just designed to apply to most, but there's other things to take into account. So other things to take into account with how you execute an incline pressing exercise, whether it's with the barbell, whether it's with the dumbbell, whether it's with the machine, is going to play a big role in whether you're actually mostly using your chest or if you're using another part of your body. So with pressing exercises, you kind of need your chest to be protruded outwards so that it's actually in position to work with the weight. If your shoulders are hunched over and rounded forward and your chest is caved in, it's really hard to put that weight through your chest, and most of it's going to go through your shoulder. So that's the first thing I'd probably say. Whatever exercise you pick, make sure your chest is out, your shoulders are not rounded forward, and you're more likely to put the weight through the actual chest itself and more likely to feel it. As you go through the set, you'll lose that structure,
Mm.
especially as you fatigue, because your body's going to try and make it a little bit easier. So you got to stay on point with checking, am I still in this chest protruded position? Once you get to rep 4, rep 5, rep 9, you'll notice it pulls back a little bit and you've got to keep driving it back out. Um, the position of your forearm in a free weight exercise kind of needs to be, um, I don't know the mathematical terms. And so I'm literally just going to say, like, we want a vertical forearm. So gravity is pointing down the whole time and the weight's here. The more the weight comes closer to your, like it's falling back onto your neck, the less it's actually in position of your chest. So you kind of want this 90-degree arm, and then we've got this action going on and the weight staying on the chest. So some small sort of considerations: chest out, vertical forearm, and incline press is definitely the exercise that's set up well to work the upper chest. What I used to say before, which was commonly said, and so I probably regurgitated stuff that I heard from other people that I respected, right? Is that for the most part, most people don't need to worry about upper chest exercises, that simply working the chest was good enough for most people who weren't specifically advanced bodybuilders.
Mm.
Uh, you can't avoid working any section of your chest in any exercise anyway. And the average person who tends to ask this question isn't developed enough for it to matter. And so that's kind of where I was at. Like, you just need to get good at pressing in the first place, and you need to
Basically.
get strong at pressing in the first place. And then once you kind of achieved an adequate level of that, that's when you can start worrying about the nuance of, am I like working my upper chest? Am I working the mid chest, lower chest, whatever? Um, and the reason I've probably changed my stance on that is based on just how humans behave. And it's like, it's not a problem for me to kind of just tell you that answer now. No biggie. As long as you are working hard enough, um, you'll see development in any muscle group. And if you want to know the answer to a very specific question and that kind of makes you feel more motivated to keep going, great, I'll give you the answer. So um, all the nuances are irrelevant if you're not basically pushing hard enough, and then obviously ticking all the other boxes like protein recovery that are needed for muscle to build. So Yeah, best exercise for upper chest, definitely presses in an inclined position. Um, Execution and the position of your body matters, and effort and intensity is also the other factor that matters. If there's not enough effort and intensity, if the position of your body is like caving in and compensating when you fatigue, um, and then of course, if you're, not using the right type of exercise, then you're probably not going to see much development in your chest. There is more caveats to that. Do I do it? Do I do it? Yeah, screw it. The most obvious one, genetics. So before you go over and look at Meite and think, man, how do I get muscles like Meite? Just realize you will never get muscles like Meite.
You're so dumb. And
All right,
it's funny that you bring the upper chest question because that's been my nemesis for the longest time.
all right.
So you bring genetics in this, and it's like, you know, I'm a I'm a very muscular dude compared to the average population, and still upper chest has been very challenging for me to grow. And genetics do play a part. I mean, I've been doing the incline presses. You've seen it. You wrote my programs. But even then, but I think there's a few factors in there. I know I'm dragging the question here, but you spoke about execution. And even though I trained for a long time, I'd argue that my execution has improved a lot over the years. And that's made a big difference to how much I was actually getting out of my upper chest exercises. So for anyone listening, if you're thinking, well, I'm already doing the upper chest exercise and it's not working, pay attention to your execution, like what Mus was just saying, and that could really be the game changer for you.
Yeah, and if you're not too clear on that, Meite does make little exercise reels on his Instagram page, which we'll link in the description. So you can go check out some of the exercise instructional videos that he posts on there, if you're stuck for what we actually mean by that. All right, cool. We'll move on. So next question, Meite, what you got for us?
Shall I go? All right, so I wonder how you're going to tackle this one, right? So this week, one of the members at my gym said, okay, mate, I need to talk to you. And I wondered, okay, so, what's going on? And suddenly she burst into tears. And I thought, what's happened there? Um, we've been running a challenge for the past 8 weeks. It's like a transformation challenge. And so she signed up to the challenge, hoping for great results. And the challenge is now ended. So before the challenge, we do a weigh-in on this machine called the Body Tracks. And at the end, we do another weigh-in. And so she was quite fixated on the weight, on the number on the scale, right? And turns out the number didn't change. And so she was quite disheartened by that. She was really disappointed, and that's why she was crying. She said, look, I feel like I've tried so hard. I've done everything that I could to lose this weight, and it's just not coming off. Like, what's going on? So I had to do a bit of digging. And I said, well, okay, tell me about other stuff. She said, well, I feel like better in my clothes. They are definitely looser. I've got more energy. I've got more strength. I've got more endurance, but my weight hasn't come down. What would you say to that person?
Hmm. There's a lot of conversation to unpack there. So the beginning of that process is where the challenge occurs. We've set out this challenge, and I don't know if it's specified or not, and I'm going to assume that it is, that the outcome is weight loss.
So in the past, it was only weight loss focused, and now they've added a new element that's muscle gain, which I think is great.
Yes, I think that's great too. So the biggest flaw with a lot of this stuff is mismanaged expectations. We've set out to create an outcome, and then um, we've used a method that doesn't lead to that outcome. So one of the biggest myths that has existed forever is that exercise directly accounts for the majority of your weight loss outcome. And it doesn't. You simply It's extremely unlikely that you'll expend enough energy through exercise alone to counter the amount of energy that we intake. And that's obviously in reference to creating a calorie deficit, which is the sole sort of driver of weight loss. Um, the other thing is then to understand, why did weight loss matter, right? So this is where weight loss is a very tricky thing. It's a very tricky conversation to have with people, and we often set people up to fail when we run these challenges in the first place, because we don't really let them know what, like, so there's a lot, like, I am a personal trainer. I do not sell personal training sessions um that are with the aim of, I'm going to help people lose weight. I sell personal training sessions with the aim that they're going to get stronger, with the aim that they're going to get fitter, with the aim that they're going to build more muscle, with the aim that they're going to learn new skills, with the aim that they're going to be more regular in healthy practices in their life. Now, some of that may then lend itself to weight loss, of course. And we have a body tracks machine at our gym. I have never once put my clients on the body track machine, because I'm aware of how human beings start paying attention to and reacting to that data. Because I learned that from training the bodybuilders, and we all used to do the tracker on getting you guys to report your measurements and your weight every single week. And when that fluctuated, what would happen? People would get disheartened. They're like, oh man, like this is not going in the right direction. That would then start to impact the instructions that I gave them. They wouldn't be as compliant with the nutritional practices that we had in place. And so it was quite disruptive psychologically to that process when we focused so much on weight in the first place. So
Mm.
what I've been able to see is that is probably not the smartest way for me to help somebody to lose weight. So two things there. Mismanage expectations that we're going to go through all of this exercise and you're going to lose weight at the end of it, because that's not how it works. Then the other thing is being too data focused and on, especially on one singular metric, which is weight itself. And that can obviously, I'm saying this to you, it's making sense to you. I'm saying this into the microphone that some people in the audience probably listening to this and like, yeah, okay, we totally know. But there's a lot of people that don't know about any of this stuff. And we've said it over and over and over again. And to the average person, it actually doesn't make a difference that you when you tell them that weight loss doesn't necessarily equate to fat loss, or that your weight can be impacted by fluctuations in water retention, what time of day it is. And even with the machines that we're talking about, it's bioelectrical impedance, yeah, which isn't got 100% accuracy rate in the first place. It will react to how much water is in your body at that moment in time, which can be affected by temperature. It's not meant to be measured so frequently. So I think it's like once every 8 weeks, you're supposed to use body track data, maybe six, I can't remember exactly.
Mm.
And then what was the other thing? Yeah, even with some of these machines, and I don't know the body tracks one specifically, but if you just change the gender on there, it will give you a completely different results. Like you could step up there, I'm a man, same data, step off, change my gender to female, literally a moment later, and it will give me a completely different set of data. So the accuracy on the machines isn't the best. So there's that factor. I am yet to figure out a smart way of letting somebody know any of this stuff that I've actually seen has had like a very impactful, significant, created a very impactful, significant paradigm shift for the person to be like, do you know what? I'll stop hyper focusing on my weight. I'll stop having an emotional reaction to my weight. I'll start focusing more on the fact that I feel better. I'll start focusing more on the fact that I actually look better in the mirror. I'll start focusing more on the fact that I'm getting stronger and I'm achieving things. I'll start focusing more on the fact that this is bringing something new into my life and not so focused on the scale weight. I'll be hands up 20 years as a personal trainer, and that would still be a question that I would be like, I don't know how this conversation is going to go. And 8 times out of 10, it's probably not going to go very well. Only thing I would aim for is, whilst I can't make you feel better about that, how do I just make sure that you keep going? That's about as much as I can give you, man. If I think of more, I'll say it, but over to you.
Fair. I mean, look, in the moment, bear in mind I'm in the middle of the studio, it's full of other people, and I've got this lady in front of me crying, and I'm trying not to like talk about her business so openly. So I'm trying to kind of manage that situation. But in a nutshell, I tried to get her to focus on all the other things that had gone well for her,
Mm.
as opposed to what hadn't gone well for her in terms of the scale and the number on the scale. So I just regurgitated what she just told me. I said, look, you're telling me that your clothes fit better. You're telling me you've got more energy. You're telling me that your performance has improved. So things have worked out. It could be that you have recomped, that so you've built some muscle, you've lost some body fat. Yes, the machine is telling you that you weigh the same, but how important is that number to you? Why do you care so much about that number? The bottom line is most people just want to look better and feel better. So really the number is irrelevant. Doesn't matter if it says 100 or if it says 50. You just want to look in the mirror and say, do you know what? I look good today. So even if the number says 100, if you feel like you look good, the number is not really that important. So, but obviously it was difficult. It was difficult for me to kind of plant that seed. But I just got to think about the fact that the number isn't really that important in the grand scheme.
Let's that's so interesting that you said that. And this is confessions of a personal trainer, Meite. So I'm gonna keep it like as brutally honest as we can. Let's put ourselves in this person's shoes. Let's be this person for a moment. And that's quite easy to do because you know what? We actually are that person. And when you think about it, we do look at weight and we do have a reaction to our weight. Maybe not to the extent that this lady is, but we're still humans. And so therefore we're still checking our weight, we're still having a little look and kind of attaching that number to where we're at that moment in time. And we're currently in a process with you of doing the opposite, right? Which is we're trying to gain weight. And there's something that you've told me is important to you in this stage is that you hit this particular number. I'm not going to say what that number is, but um, it's kind of been running in the background. And the behaviors that you've demonstrated to me is you have been motivated and proactive in making sure that that number gets tracked. So you've been logging your weigh-ins without me even having to prompt you or remind you or anything because you're on point with that. You're focused on that, and you're trying to get to that target, and you're working as hard as you can to make sure that that happens.
Mm.
And I could turn around and be like, "Oh, but mate, as long as you're looking the way we want you to look, why does it matter that whether you weigh that much or not?" So, what are you saying to me now?
What would I say to that? I don't know. I think it's one of those things where I don't consider myself normal because when it comes to like weight loss or weight gain, I think I have more control than the average person. So when people say, "Oh, I'm struggling to lose 2 pounds or 5 pounds," for me, that's not hard. So it's difficult for me to empathize on that level. But when it comes to like the weight gain, there's also like how much information how much I know. So my goal right now is to build muscle. So I think the goal is important. I'm trying to build muscle. And so I don't have to hit that specific number that I've got in mind, but I know that the trajectory should be upwards. If my weight stayed the same for the next 6 months, what muscle have I built? Nothing. I mean, maybe I've recomped a little bit, but it's like I'm trying to build as much muscle as I can. So that means I'm going to be in a somewhat small to medium-ish caloric surplus. My weight is going to go up. And if the weight doesn't go up, that for me is a good metric, a good enough metric to tell whether I'm gaining muscle or not. So that's why I use that number. So I think it's important to look at, okay, why do I use this specific metric? Is this metric linked to my goal? If I just want to look at the beach, for me, the number is irrelevant. I don't need to do this. I just need to look in the mirror, take some pictures. Do I look good? Yes, no. Cool, and that's it.
I
So
think
that's my
that's
answer
a
to you.
yeah, that's a fairly fair response. If I'm looking at it, so I on occasion do periods of like fat loss, weight loss, whatever you want to call it. And I'm fairly experienced at doing that, maybe more so than the average person like yourself. And therefore, I've got a greater deal of control over how that's going to go. And for me, on average, I will experience 0.5 kilogram of weight loss that will occur. And so that's a nice number to let me know that I'm probably not really losing muscle here, and just my general fat mass is coming down. That allows me to then track over time. Okay, if I need to lose 6 kilograms, I'm probably going to need at least 12 weeks to do that. I've also then got to factor in life. So it's unlikely that I'm going to have a smooth 12 weeks where everything just goes according to plan. So likely we're going to have at least a 20% life variance that occurs. So we can maybe say you got to add an extra 3 weeks onto that where you're going to have like the odd week that just doesn't go quite so well, or I just don't have the willpower to push through for 12 weeks. So I'll just round it up to 16 weeks. I'd need to give myself 16 weeks to drop 6 kilograms. Um, Assuming 6 kilograms was the amount that it was going to like take to get me to create a visual look that I was looking for. Um, I guess I also know through experience that I'm not going to see that 0.5 kilogram every single week. And what I'm talking about is 0.5 kilogram on average. So if I take the average of 6 weeks that my weight has dropped and by 0.5 kilogram, it might be that today I've weighed myself, I am 70 kilos. Next week I weigh myself, I'm 70.2. Because on that particular moment that I weighed myself, there was a bit more fluid retention or whatever. Then the following week, I'm now 69.3. And then the following week, I'm 68.7. And then the following week, I'm 68.8. So like I know it's just going to be jumping around. What I'm doing is I'm just tracking the average over time. And you
So I've
need,
got a question for you on that.
yeah.
So if you're trying to improve the way that you look, why track that data?
And I don't trust body fat measuring tools. So the next closest thing I have to know that I'm losing something is weight. And the reason I'm losing something is I'm trying to reduce my body fat level. If I reduce my body fat level, my muscle becomes more visible. And when we're talking about being aesthetically pleasing, whether it's on the beach or on a bodybuilding show, what we're trying to display is our muscles because our muscles are aesthetic. The body fat that covers it, um, according to the human society that we currently live in, is not aesthetic. And that's a philosophical debate I'm not going to get into. But if we just wanted to be massively shallow about it, we like seeing muscles or muscular tone on a human body. We don't so much enjoy seeing large amounts of body fat hanging off of our skeleton. Um, So on average, it's safe to say most people, when they're trying to look good on the beach, they're just saying, I don't want rolls of belly fat hanging over my shorts or my bikini. Um, and I would like everything to be like quite firm, tight, and yeah, well shaped. So I don't walk around looking beach ready. Um, in fact, I'm almost never in that position, which means that if I did want to be like, more aesthetically pleasing, I would have to go through a process of reducing my body fat. And the best way for me to measure that, in my experience, until technology improves, it's just for me to, yeah, be in a calorie deficit and watch my weight go down at a rate of half a kilo a week on average. And because I've got experience, I've been able to see that, yeah, I can make myself look visually better through that particular pathway. Is that the only way to do it? I'm sure it's not. It's just my experience of it. And so, because it's something I'm familiar with, I'm likely to continue doing that every time. There's probably like 100 tangents and nuances we can get into there, but that the weight loss is
It's a lot.
it
It's a lot.
unravels. But I think you handled that question quite well with the lady, and that was quite fair. You reaffirmed all the positives that happened. What was her response?
I mean, she stopped crying.
That's good.
So for me, that's a win in itself. And we agreed to continue tracking those things. But I think one thing that was I could tell that I only got so much buy-in. So although she agreed that the number on the scale isn't everything, it's still important to her, and I
Yeah.
can't I can't ignore it. And so one more thing that she said, which I was kind of gonna ask you as well, is she said, I'm this much weight, I'm in a calorie deficit, I'm on 1600 calories a day, and my weight isn't coming down. And so as she says this to me, I'm like, my brain is going. But the first thing I'm thinking is, how do you know? How do you know you're in a caloric deficit if your weight hasn't come down? It's been 8 weeks and you're the same weight. That, in my experience, that tells me that you're not in a caloric deficit. And
Mm.
there's a multitude of reasons for that. I mean, it could be, to be fair, that your weight that day was a little bit high because, again, hormones or water retention or whatever. But I mean, 8 weeks is quite a bit of time. Assuming that you could have lost about half a kilo a week, we're looking at about 4 kilos here. So I don't think it's going to be 4 kilos of water retention. So I'm going to assume that she hasn't, she's lost maybe some body fat, but maybe not that much.
No, so the emotional response tells you a lot.
Mm.
That emotional response means that it's loaded with lots of other things that weren't being said in that moment. And this person is clearly struggling with stuff outside of the challenge, outside of our weight loss. And people often don't like clearly communicate exactly what it is that they need and what they want. A highly emotional person is not like a robot, right? Who is doing everything to like pinpoint accurate levels of um or pinpoint levels of accuracy. So I would say the likelihood that she's is that me or you?
Is that sorry?
I think it's me. Fuck, it's so weird because I can hear the sirens in my headphones,
Oh, there's no sirens here.
but I can't hear the sirens out here. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm not even going to edit that out. Enjoy that, audience.
Yeah,
Um,
no, where I am is like dead quiet, man. I live in the bushlands.
um, so in my experience, is that individual they know they haven't been in a calorie deficit. Deep down, they know they haven't been in a calorie deficit. They're feeling shame, they're feeling guilt. They're not going to admit to it. That's fine. But yeah, they're struggling, is what they're saying. I'm finding life really hard right now, and I'm trying, and my efforts aren't good enough because I just can't be like how I'm seeing everyone else is able to do it and I'm not able to do it, and therefore I'm not good enough. And so there's this whole narrative potentially that's kind of happening. You can't have that conversation with someone, especially not in the middle of a gym floor
Mm,
surrounded by people. So you almost have to roll with it. And it becomes all about listening, even though everything they're saying, a lot of what they're saying isn't true. So they are lying, right? They're not lying in this malicious, nefarious way. They're not trying to get one over you. They're lying to protect themselves.
mm.
And so in those moments, a lot of empathy is needed. And yes, I know that you were doing lines of coke on the weekend, but I'm not going to make you admit to that right now. Yes, I know that you couldn't stick to the calorie deficit and you ended up binge eating multiple times in the week, but I'm not going to make you admit to it. Yes, I know that you went out and had several drinks with your friends,
So you post it on Instagram.
but it's not very constructive for me to confront you with all of that right now. And really, what you're asking for is basically asking for support.
Mm.
And the best way I can support you right now, again, going back to what I said earlier, the only thing that matters, the only outcome that matters is past this moment. Um, how do we keep you going? So we can focus on the last 6 weeks or we can focus on the next 6 weeks. And you will get there whenever you get there, and I will be here with you whilst that happens. And so that's the only thing I've kind of, and it's not massively satisfactory to us as the practitioner, but it's kind of what that person needs. And yeah, almost because I know that the majority of times is underreporting, right? People are underreporting their calories. They don't have the skills and experience necessary to accurately track what they're intaking, accurately measure all the different variables like physical activity, sleep, stress, what's going on with especially when it comes to women, what's going on with their hormones. Like all of that stuff is not gonna, they're not a scientific study that
Mm.
we're measuring them in this controlled environment. There's tons of variables that don't get taken into account. So no, they definitely don't know whether they're in a calorie deficit or not. If they haven't lost weight, it meant that they weren't in a calorie deficit. That's factually true. Addressing the conversation with the individual is a whole different thing. So, and all of that stuff isn't particularly useful in that moment. Um, but listening and empathy generally tend to be very, very useful in that moment. Reinforcing the positives is also very, very important in that moment. And just that person walking away feeling like this person hasn't given up on me. I've still got somebody in my corner. And I've got more time and space, and I can forgive myself and I can accept myself for who I am right now at this moment in time. Because just because my weight didn't go down, it didn't make me any less of a person.
Bro, that's a mic drop moment. You gotta turn that into a reel or something. I don't know, man. Damn.
Um, I'm not sure if that really answers the question.
It did. We're good. We're good. I just yeah, the question was how would you how would you respond to the person? So yeah, that makes sense.
Um, man, those were good. Those were good. I did say I didn't know exactly how many questions we would cover. I kind of gave a rough time frame. We're at like the 40-minute mark. Um, should we call it here or do another question? Um, because my brain went straight to the upper chest question because, well, that was one question that was asked of me recently. Um, there is a couple of other questions I get asked, but they're a bit controversial. Uh,
Controversial. Let's definitely do it.
no, only because again, it would just take us too long to
To
controversial ones.
unpack.
Yeah, if there's like a short, sharp, useful question that's kind of like, actually, this is really helpful, and it's not going to take us longer than 5 minutes to unpack it. Um, something like, uh,
I've got one for you if you want it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think there's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna take that long for us to unpack.
go for it.
So I've got this gentleman who says he's recovering from injury, by the way. So he had a shoulder injury
Okay.
because in a nutshell, he tends to go a bit too hard. You know that bit like ego lifting,
Yeah.
a little bit of body English here and there, and that's how he got injured in the first place, right? So he's come to my studio. I'm now coaching him. I'm telling him, hey, look, you can slow things down, focus on quality, focus on technique. But he feels that, I mean, he's doing it, but it sucks because he's like, I have to lower the weight, dude, by a lot. I'm like, yeah, that's what you have to do. It's like, okay. So he's kind of doing both. He's taking Orange Theory classes with me, and he's also going to the gym by himself, where he's lifting weights, which is fine. And so his question to me is, well, I can tell that I can lift more weight on bicep curls. Should I or shouldn't I? And I'm like, hey, do you know what? I'm not gonna answer the question. I want to let that one sit with you. But that's I'm just kind of drawing the picture for you. Recovering from injury because of the body English, because of the ego lifting, and now I've asked him to drop the weight. He has done that, and now he's feeling like, you know what? I've got the strength to go up. Should I just go up? Bearing in mind that going up means adding a little bit of body English.
Um, so we kind of touched on this earlier when we were talking about the upper chest exercises and how having the right position of your body matters and dictates whether you're actually putting that weight through that muscle or you're just compensating with a bunch of other parts of your body. So when you say body English, even I'm not massively familiar with that term, but I know what you mean. And for the context of the audience, it just means probably like swinging the weights around, like suddenly bending through your back when you're trying to do a bicep curl, or just like breaking the form of the exercise to move the weight. I'm going to guess that's what we're referring to when we say body English.
All right.
So yeah, that would then defeat the purpose because you're no longer loading the target muscle. So the extra work that you do isn't being done by your biceps. It's being done by your lower back, or that weight's being put through your shoulder joint. So instead of getting more muscle growth, you're just increasing the damage cost of the exercise. So it's counterproductive. So pretty straightforward. Don't do that. Um, the second part to that is some exercises when we're talking about increasing the amount of work that we do on the exercise. If we're talking about a bicep curl, it's very obvious that we don't have that much interest in how heavy we can curl. We have more interest in how big our biceps are. So when we're looking at increasing the size of a muscle, um, we're kind of talking about the total volume of work as well as mechanical tension, but let's just focus on volume because it's a lot easier to digest mentally. Um, if I'm using 10 kilograms or to do a bicep curl and I do 8 repetitions, that's 8 repetitions times the 10 kilogram weight. It's 8 times 10, which is 80 kilograms. That's my total volume. And so if I want to progress and I want to make my muscles bigger, I might want to be doing a little bit more volume. So could I increase the weight by, um, well, going from a 10 kilo to a 12 kilo is actually a big jump. You're talking about 20% increase in weight, and 20% is huge in weight increase terms. It would be like saying I can bench 100 kilos. So on my next set, I'm going to try and bench 120 kilos, which is, if you bench, then you probably understand that's a big jump, especially if you can't even do 100 kilos or 120. Um, so it's just easier for me to do more work with the 10 kilos. So if I'm doing 8 reps, this week, I'm going to try and do 10 without, trying to use other parts of my body. And I've increased from 80 kilos of volume to 100 kilos of volume. And yeah, it's my biceps that did the work, not my lower back or my shoulder joint. like doing extra stuff to make that happen. Again, very similar to the previous question where the logic adds up, but this person is not operating in a logical way. So then we then have to start to understand the underlying motivations and reasons as to why this person trains that way, why they feel the need to push themselves in that way, why even though that it causes them harm, they still wish to persist in that way. So there's something in that moment that person's not feeling calm and they may be feeling a bit anxious. They may be feeling like, oh, people are watching me. I don't want to look like I'm weak. I don't want to,
That's it.
I'm comparing myself to somebody. So the image in my head is like, ah, I'm trying to get muscles like Meite. That's going to become a thing. Um, um, and then they're like, yeah, they're beating themselves down. They've got this a lot of negative self-talk happening. And so they're no longer proceeding in a logical, safe practice, effective way. It's all just driven by emotion. I think the this episode and the two questions that you've given me, I'm gonna like massively like label that whole section and subject matter as the best thing all of these individuals can do is work on becoming more emotionally self-aware, especially in the moments that trigger them. So when you're weighing yourself, pay attention to how you're feeling. When you're doing your bicep curls or any other exercise, pay attention to how you're feeling. How much of that is being driven? How much of what your thoughts and feelings are being driven by your emotion, and how much of it is being driven by the logic of the moment? And it will be very telling. And the more self-aware somebody can become, the more control, because that's what we were talking about. We have control, is because we're less emotional about the whole thing. It doesn't matter if my weight goes up or down. I am confident enough to know that in 12 weeks, I'm going to be down 6 kilos because I'm following the process. You are confident enough to know that you're going to be up XYZ amount of kilos because you're following the process. You're not, it's not an emotional thing for you. But if you attach your sense of self-worth to that outcome, it becomes way more emotional and you lose sight of effective practices. And yet you increase the risk of basically derailing yourself and not seeing your outcome. So, yeah, there's only so much we can do
Mm.
for that gentleman and for that lady and for the asshole who always asks me questions. Um,
I wonder if he's going to be watching this.
he probably will. uh, it's it's a matter of becoming very self-aware of yourself and how you're feeling. We can give you information, but your behaviors are determined by your thoughts and your emotions. And if you can, we can only help you manage those so much that, but that is a personal responsibility that we all have for ourselves, and no one can really do that for us. So get a handle on that. And I guarantee you, you will start seeing much better outcomes with everything, not just your health and fitness.
Sweet.
All right. Cool. I like that was a good question. That was a good question. I like that. All right. Do you know what? My idea is to have like lots of different personal trainers that I know come on and, give us their sort of thoughts and insights in terms of dealing with some of these questions. But I always, 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 always enjoy doing this with you. And the audience always feeds back that they really like you in general. So hopefully we can do this quite frequently, actually, if you're up for it.
Yeah,
Um,
man, that'll be
I'm
good.
sure we can discuss that more off camera. But for now, thank you very much. Though not only great answers, but that you had like absolutely fantastic questions. So way better than I expected this first episode to go.
Nah, this is good. This is good.
Uh,
Warming up my heart, man.
I appreciate the fresh trim.
That it was desperately needed.
You're looking good, man. You're looking good. All right,
Thank you very
cool.
much.
So yeah, we'll catch you next time. Thanks.
See you.